At first glance, you'd swear you were looking at a sculpture. Gold engravings, finely carved arabesques, a horse symbolizing status. But beneath that polish is one of the most feared weapons of the frontier. This isn't a shelf ornament. It's engineering designed to end lives. Back in the days of the westward expansion, the deadliest revolvers often wore a mask of beauty. Today, we're peeling back that layer to get to know the firepower machines that rewrote the rules of survival on the plains. We're going beyond the Colt everyone talks about in the movies. We'll look at pieces that, in their time, felt like they came from the future. More firepower, faster reloads, unpredictable range. So keep your eyes sharp. In the next few minutes, you'll find out which revolvers decided who lived to tell the tale. Some models will turn upside down everything you thought you knew about showdowns at the frontier's twilight. Number 15. Colt Walker, the hand cannon that redefined dueling in the Old West. In 1847, the Texas Rangers adopted a weapon so big it had to be carried in a holster strapped to the saddle. Weighing over 4 pounds and measuring nearly 16 inches, the Colt Walker was born from the partnership between Samuel Colt and Captain Samuel Walker. The request was simple: stop a Comanche warrior dead in his tracks at 50 yards. The result was a .44 caliber revolver loaded with powder charges, comparable to today's Magnum rounds. When the trigger was pulled, the impact could knock a target right off his horse. Often the fight ended before it even began. The sight of that cylinder emerging from the holster was enough to chill an opponent's blood. The Walker also changed tactics. With 6 shots ready to go, the Ranger could ditch the slow-loading rifle for rapid fire and command respect. Each shot was a warning. The frontier had a new judge, and he spoke loud. That kind of power came at a price. The extreme pressure from the heavy loads sometimes pushed the steel past its limits, and a few Rangers ended their skirmishes clutching smoking fragments. Even so, the Walker became a symbol of strength in a time when every bullet had to convince whoever was still standing to back off. While it roared across the Texas plains, European gunsmiths were already working on lighter, safer, and faster mechanisms that, within a few years, would make the American giant look like a museum piece. The stage was set, and the race for revolver supremacy had only just begun. Number 14. The European invader Lefaucheur pinfire. Bullets are zipping through the air, but a different metallic sound stands out in the Old West. It's the sharp click of the Lefaucheur pinfire revolver, a visitor that broke away from the rules of old flintlocks. Instead of loose powder and a separate primer, the French packed everything, charge, primer, and projectile, into a single brass cartridge marked by a small side pin. The change seemed simple, but it flipped dueling on its head. Just spin the cylinder, load full cartridges, and you were back in the game before your rival even reached for his powder flask. When the Civil War broke out, French officers brought their pinfires along in their luggage. Before long, a few found their way across pawn shop counters and into the holsters of cowboys riding the dusty trails of Kansas and Texas. Anyone holding that European piece felt the edge right away. Fewer steps, less stress, more shots. But progress usually comes at a price. The protruding pin turned every cartridge into a walking trap. A horse's stumble or a hit against a rock could strike the pin and set off an explosion right on the shooter's hip. Even so, the promise of near-instant reloads outshined the risk, and the foreign revolver kept turning heads in the saloons. Meanwhile, across the channel, British engineers were watching the dilemma. Instead of sticking with the pin, they started redesigning the cylinder and hammer, paving the way for the next big leap in the history of handheld weapons. Number 13. Beaumont Adams, the revolver that fired before you could blink. When the West got its hands on the Beaumont Adams, the old habit of cocking the hammer before every shot became a thing of the past. All you had to do was pull the trigger, and the cylinder would spin again. Someone in a duel with a single-action Colt was barely cocking their second shot, while the Adams owner had already sent the third bullet through the smoke. The British double-action mechanism delivered a rate of fire that felt endless to gunslingers used to mechanical pauses. In saloon brawls, where elbows knocked over tables and chairs went flying, that split second meant walking home instead of being carried out. Cowboys lucky enough to import the gun quickly realized that, at close range, its power came just as much from speed as it did from surprise. From the outside, the near-constant bang of shots threw people off. Many rivals, convinced they were facing a whole group, dove for cover before even taking aim. That sudden panic spread faster than the smell of gunpowder, shaping the Adamses' reputation as the double-action destroyer. But not everyone thought firing multiple shots was enough. Soon, a hot-headed doctor would come forward with an even more extreme idea for dominating any shootout, and it would change the game all over again. Number 12. LeMat, the revolver that turned into a shotgun. When a surgeon from New Orleans decided 6 shots weren't enough, a bold solution was born. A 9-shot .42 caliber cylinder wrapped around a 20-gauge shotgun barrel, both fired from the same trigger. At first glance, it looked like just another revolver, but all it took was an opponent counting the usual 6 rounds to get caught off guard by 3 extra shots, followed by a blast of buckshot that could clear the whole room. During the Civil War, Confederate officers quickly caught on to the trick. After the war, the LeMat made its way into civilian hands, people looking for an edge in ambushes and duels. The secret was in a lever on the hammer. Flip it, and you could instantly switch between the cylinder and the central barrel. No slow reloads needed. Its fame crossed borders. Word is, Wild Bill Hickok kept one on his belt to take on gangs without swapping holsters. Just flashing it was enough to cool down arguments in plenty of saloons. In revolver mode, it delivered solid accuracy at mid-range. The shotgun blast scattered enough lead to stop a charging horse or take down multiple attackers at once. Not everything was a win, though. The complex mechanism needed constant cleaning, delicate parts jammed with powder residue, and the extra weight wore out your arm after a few miles on patrol. Still, anyone wielding a LeMat proved that sometimes innovation means combining different systems to make something entirely new. Number 11. Colt Navy 1851. Elegance that fires. More than just a revolver, the Colt Navy showed up on the frontier as an extension of the arm. The .36 caliber offered the balance cowboys were after. Light recoil to realign the barrel in a blink, and just enough power to end a fight. The 7.5-inch barrel gave the projectile steady push, making clean hits where other guns missed. Its fame grew from the crimson belt of Wild Bill Hickok, who challenged both clocks and legends with his polished pair. Every shot helped carve the Navy's reputation into saloon walls, drawing in gunslingers who trusted their lives to precision. Blacksmiths soon engraved arabesques into the steel and fitted ivory grips for ranchers hungry for status. But behind the charm was calculation. 6 chambers meant steady fire. The octagonal cylinder balanced the weight, making the sights land right where the eyes already were. In ambushes, that kind of agility turned seconds into a winning edge. There were limits, though. Against stubborn targets, the .36 sometimes needed a second shot, a gap that would soon make room for bigger calibers. Even so, the mix of accuracy, reliability, and handling locked the Colt Navy into history. More than a deadly tool, it became a symbol of someone who mastered both skill and style. In the next chapter of our journey through Old West firepower, we'll see how that legacy pushed Colt to up the caliber without losing the balance. Number 10. Colt Army 1860, the final blow. When Union command demanded more stopping power than the Colt Navy could deliver, the answer came in the form of this .44 caliber revolver. The Army 1860 kept the Colt's famous balance, but every line of its reinforced cylinder and 8-inch barrel said, "This ends now." It made its debut in the smoke of the Civil War. From horseback, cavalrymen fired from over 100 yards away, dropping enemies before they could strike back. Its rifle-like range and the intimidating barrel diameter earned instant respect. Many surrendered at the mere sight of it pointed their way. Off the front lines, that range meant hunting deer and bison without switching guns, something priceless when traveling light. A single well-placed shot brought meat to camp and added another notch to Colt's reputation for accuracy. With peace, the Army headed west. On dusty trails and in saloons, sheriffs, cowboys, and settlers relied on it to keep order or protect their herds. The revolver stood up to dust, drops, and rust. Just spin the cylinder, cock the hammer, and it was ready to spit lead again. But that toughness came at a cost. The added weight pulled on the belt, and the long barrel slowed the draw, potentially fatal in fast duels on the new wooden streets. So the frontier began favoring smaller, quicker guns, sacrificing power for speed. Still, the Army kept its reputation as the conversation ender. All it took was its silhouette against the sunset to remind everyone that sometimes one shot settles it all. Number 9. Colt Lightning, the flash that redefined speed. Picture a tense saloon, cards on the table, eyes locked, floorboards creaking. When the first cowboy moves his hand, the lightning answers with a burst of metallic clicks. Unlike single-action revolvers that need the hammer cocked before every shot, Colt's double-action system turns finger pressure into an almost continuous stream of fire, putting the shooter a few steps ahead. Its solid frame handles that blistering pace, keeping the cylinder aligned even under heavy use. A side-loading gate speeds up reloads. .38 or .41 cartridges slide in, while the rival's still trying to figure out what just happened. No wonder lawmen started carrying the Lightning through the dusty border towns, where split seconds decide who lives to tell the tale. Gamblers quickly realize that speed beats luck. Drawing and firing multiple times before the other guy can cock the hammer is worth more than any chip on the green felt. The trade-off is the heavy trigger. Without practice, the barrel wobbles and accuracy vanishes, making overconfidence a real risk. Maintenance also comes at a price. Delicate gears need frequent cleaning, a cost accepted by those who prefer speed over the simple toughness of a single action. While rivals chased new calibers or designs, Colt went all in on pure cadence, creating a legend that proves in the Old West the winner wasn't always the strongest. Sometimes it was the fastest. Number 8. Smith & Wesson Model 3, when reloading became an advantage. While most frontier shooters were jamming bullets into the cylinder one by one, the Model 3 had a game-changing trick. Flip the latch, the barrel tips down, and the empty shells pop out. Load 6.44 American cartridges, snap it shut, and fire again. All in under 10 seconds, while your rival's still fumbling with the old loading rod. That simplicity came from refined engineering. Originally built for a Russian military contract that demanded quick handling in snowy conditions, the revolver soon crossed the Atlantic and became the go-to for cowboys, explorers, and sheriffs. For anyone living between ambushes, every second saved meant one less funeral. The metal cartridge combined powder, primer, and bullet into one, cutting down on misfires. With Smith & Wesson's precise machining, it delivered reliable range and enough stopping power to take down cattle or end close-quarters fights. The barrel's balance and rounded grip made instinctive aiming easier. Even beginners reported tighter shot groupings. But the innovation came with a price. The brake-top mechanism relied on tightly fitted parts, hard to replace in remote outposts and prone to loosen up with rough use. Some seasoned shooters carried a second revolver, not for extra ammo but as mechanical insurance. Still, anyone wielding a Model 3 felt ahead of their time. Reloading stopped being a tense pause behind a barrel and became a blink-of-an-eye move, shifting the edge to whoever mastered the rhythm of 6 metallic clicks. Number 7. Steel Strength Remington New Model Army. When Colt's patents expired, the West scrambled to find the next big thing. Remington's answer was a revolver that swapped Colt's open-frame design for a solid block of steel, quickly nicknamed the Sledgehammer. The fully enclosed cylinder could handle heavier powder loads without cracking. The .44 caliber was still familiar, but the beefed-up frame pushed bullets at speeds that made the revolver feel almost like a saddle rifle. That toughness brought 2 instant advantages: high accuracy, thanks to less flex, and rock-solid reliability, even in dust, mud, or rain. Bounty hunters, frontier sheriffs, and army scouts soon came to trust it, knowing it wouldn't fail when it mattered most. The loading lever mounted under the barrel slid smoothly, cutting down reload time and saving fingers during drawn-out fights. The trade-off for all that strength was felt in the holster. Extra weight that wore on your arm after a long ride. Cleaning took more effort too, since the fixed cylinder didn't come out as easily as the Colt's. Still, for folks who lived by the trigger, those few extra ounces were worth the peace of mind. It's worth noting that before Colt or Remington had refined their designs, there was already a revolver even more colossal. The first one truly called a hand cannon. But that story's coming up in the next scene. Number 6. Colt Dragoon, the giant that gave the Old West its voice. Before the Walker became the go-to symbol of firepower, Colt had already delivered something even bigger, the Dragoon. Built for cavalrymen, it weighed over 4 pounds and had a 7.5-inch barrel. Its .44 cylinder took a generous load of black powder. The muzzle flash could be seen for miles. One shot could punch through 2 men or drop a horse in its tracks. During the Mexican-American War, dragoons fired at just yards from their targets. The first volleys shattered formations and many turned back just at the sight of the hand cannon holstered to a saddle. Beyond the physical damage, the sharp crack echoing through the valleys hit hard psychologically. Soldiers called the Dragoon death on horseback and swore the sound alone could make recruits drop their bayonets. On the frontier, hunters, stagecoach drivers, and travelers put their trust in the Dragoon, too. Its massive frame barely wore down. Some folks even used it as a club when ammo ran dry, without doing any real damage to the gun. That toughness was a kind of life insurance out where spare parts and backup didn't exist. But that power came at a price. Concealed carry? Forget it. Quick draw? Only with constant practice. Every round was heavy, and long treks wore you out. Reloading through the front of the cylinder took up precious time. As the West pushed forward, guns that struck a balance between power, quick reloads, and better handling started to take over, pushing the colossal Dragoon into history, but not into obscurity. Number 5. Merwin and Hulbert, the revolver that redefined reloading. When an empty cylinder meant lost seconds, the Merwin and Hulbert flipped the script with a quick trick. Just twist and slide the barrel forward. The spent casings popped out, while the live round stayed put. That selective ejection saved powder, cut down on movements, and kept the shooter in the game. Swapping out only what you'd fired got you back into the action before your opponent could react. No surprise the chosen round was the .44, 40, the same used in Winchester rifles. One belt fed both horse and rider, ending the headache of mixed calibers. The clever joint between barrel and frame did more than speed up reloads. It tightened the whole setup, giving you tight groupings at ranges most folks thought only rifles could handle. That time advantage could decide duels in dusty cantinas. Sheriffs and bounty hunters quickly caught on and adopted the design, easily spotted by its long silhouette and unusual opening motion. Of course, innovation comes at a cost. The mechanism, packed with fine parts, needed regular cleaning. If a spring snapped far from a big town, you had to get creative. Mastering the twist and pull sequence took hours of practice, scaring off the curious and drawing in those who lived by the gun. Still, patent diagrams show how the maker dared to push a familiar idea to the edge. Proof that evolution often comes from pushing what we know just a little further. Number 4. Colt Buntline Special, the Legend Maker. When the 12-inch barrel of this revolver cleared the holster, its silhouette looked like a miniature carbine. The visual impact said it all. Anyone holding a Buntline Special was making a statement. That long barrel wasn't just for show. It let the .45 Colt cartridge's powder burn completely, adding extra velocity, a flatter trajectory, and range that made other revolvers look like slingshots. Stories about Wyatt Earp in Dodge City and Tombstone fed its fame. Whether he actually dropped distant targets with impossible shots, we'll never know for sure. But the mix of myth and possibility was enough to make the Buntline a lasting symbol of precision. The front-heavy balance softened the recoil and gave just enough time to realign the sights, turning each shot into a surgical strike. But no power comes without a price. The oversized barrel made for a slow draw. A stray thread of fabric could catch and ruin the motion. Tight spaces became obstacle courses of furniture and door frames, where the long metal gave away your position. That's why the bunt line shined in planned showdowns, where a single well-placed shot settled everything. For those needing to react in split seconds, smaller revolvers still ruled. Even so, what this model taught still rings true today. Extreme specialization can turn an ordinary tool into a legend, if the person behind it knows its limits and picks the right moment to let it speak. Number 3. The Peacemaker, the Colt Single-Action Army. Dust rises on the main street and everyone knows what's coming. When someone rested their hand on a Peacemaker, every eye locked onto the scene. Introduced in 1873, Colt's revolver brought together a rare mix of power and control. The .45 Colt cartridge could stop a horse, and the single-action trigger gave the shooter the confidence to hit whatever they aimed at. While earlier models were front-heavy or slipped in the grip, the Peacemaker felt like an extension of the arm. Cock the hammer, line up the barrel, and the target was already in sight. That instinctive response settled duels before the first shot. Just drawing the gun was enough to end an argument. The legend grew as men like Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday walked into saloons with it on their hip. But it wasn't just the famous names. Ranchers, sheriffs, and outlaws wore identical grooves into their holsters, trusting that the simple mechanism would hold up through mud, rain, or a fall on stone. Each owner shaped the revolver to their needs. Short barrels for lightning draws, long ones for distance shots, mother of pearl or walnut grips for better hold. The style varied, but not the trust. The metallic click of the cylinder locking shut sealed peace deals, or final verdicts. So, more than steel and gunpowder, the Peacemaker became a symbol of resolve in lands where the law arrived after the first shot. Number 2. The Schofield, the revolver that changed the cavalry game. Mounted soldiers needed a weapon that could settle the fight before the enemy got too close. That's why, when the U.S. cavalry had to choose its revolver, the Smith & Wesson Schofield beat out the famous Colt Peacemaker. Its edge came from its top-break action. Press the latch, the barrel tipped forward, and all 6 spent shells popped out at once. While a Colt shooter was still poking at the cylinder to remove each casing one by one, the cavalryman with a Schofield was already loading fresh .45 rounds, snapping it shut and charging back in, all in under 10 seconds. Speed, though, was just part of the deal. The .45 Schofield cartridge was built specifically for this platform. Manageable recoil, dependable flight path, and most importantly, enough stopping power to bring down a horse mid-charge. In the whirlwind of sabers and dust, one well-placed shot could break the enemy line and save the unit. Every detail of the design answered to the battlefield's demands. Less time reloading meant more time protecting the troops, and the confidence the Schofield gave its soldiers cemented its reputation as the true flaming sword of the black powder era. Number 1. The Paired Set, 12 Shots of Death. In the Old West, the most feared weapon wasn't a specific model, but the strategy of carrying twin revolvers. When a shooter drew 2 matching pieces, it was clear every second of the fight had been planned. Instead of 6 shots, there were 12. And every split second saved on reloading could decide who made it home. Hickok, Hardin, and many others knew it. They spent hours practicing ambidextrously until each trigger felt like part of their own body. Wielding the pair wasn't just about putting more lead in the air. It was about eliminating the mental pause that signals fear and gives the opponent an opening. While the enemy counted rounds and fumbled for cartridges, the 2-gun duelist pushed forward, forcing retreat before the first cylinder even ran dry. The sight of 2 barrels pointed at your chest brought a heavy silence, one that could end the duel before the first shot. This wasn't showboating, it was survival honed to the edge. The Old West rewarded those who matched gear and skill into a tight, coherent system, and the paired set was the ultimate expression of that brutal logic. In the end, mastering this art didn't require luck or sudden fame. It only took keeping rhythm, squeezing the triggers, and letting the dust settle. That lesson still echoes today. Strategy and preparation can turn ordinary tools into legends. And in a world where seconds mean lives, 12 shots aren't just double. They're the line between making history and becoming someone else's story.